The arena smelled of rust and blood. Alex Morgan stood barefoot on the cold metal floor, her muscles tense as she took in the sheer size of the Colosseum. Above her, 100,000 alien voices roared, a cacophony of guttural howls and metallic screeches. Towering monolithic spires loomed over the stands, each adorned with banners depicting the Zelnatha's past conquests. The murals painted a brutal history, species broken and enslaved beneath the might of these so-called Juggernauts. Alex didn't need the history lesson. She knew exactly what they were. A race bred for war, cybernetically enhanced warriors who had crushed civilizations and turned them into entertainment. Their kind took pleasure in watching weaker species fight for survival, and for centuries, humanity had been beneath their notice. That changed when the first human colony fell. The Zelnath hadn't expected resistance. They had not expected humans to fight to the last breath, to turn their own weapons against them, to make them bleed. That defiance had made them curious. So, they had taken prisoners, eager to see if humans could amuse them in their blood-soaked colosseums. None had lasted more than a single bout. Alex was about to be the next. A voice boomed through the arena, vibrating the very floor beneath her feet. It was the warlord Vorgul himself, the reigning champion, speaking from the grand platform above. His voice, a guttural growl laced with the hum of mechanical augmentation, dripped with disdain. Another human weakling joins our grand spectacle. Will she entertain us? Or will she fall like the rest, screaming for mercy? Laughter erupted from the stands, a chorus of cruel amusement. Alex kept her face impassive. She had been in worse situations. The gates at the far end of the arena rumbled open, releasing her opponent. It was not one of the Juggernauts, at least, not yet. The Zelnath rarely wasted their warriors on a first bout. Instead, they favored creatures bred for slaughter. A quadrupedal beast, its skin a mass of dark red chitin, stepped forward. Razor-lined limbs twitched in anticipation, and its eyeless head swiveled toward her, scenting its next meal. Alex exhaled slowly. She had no weapons, no armor, just her wits and her training. The beast lunged. She sidestepped, barely avoiding the scythe-like claw that slashed the air where she had stood. The creature was fast, but not as fast as she had expected. Its weight slowed its turning speed. It was built to overpower prey, not chase it. The crowd jeered as she danced just out of reach, her mind cataloging the beast's attack patterns. The longer she survived, the angrier the Juggernauts became. They wanted carnage, blood. Alex delivered. As the beast lunged again, she dropped low, rolling beneath it. Her hands found the exposed joint of its hind leg. She twisted, slamming her elbow into the vulnerable spot. The creature shrieked, staggering. It wasn't enough. It turned with a snarl, swiping at her midsection. She barely twisted away, but the edge of its claw caught her ribs, tearing through skin. Pain flared, but she ignored it. She had felt worse. The beast coiled for another lunge, but this time, she was ready. She feigned a stumble, baiting it forward. The moment it committed, she surged upward, grabbing one of its smaller front limbs. Using its momentum, she swung onto its back, wrapping her legs around its thick neck. It thrashed wildly, slamming her into the ground, but she held on. Gritting her teeth against the pain, she snaked her arm around its throat, finding the soft flesh beneath the armored plates. And then she squeezed. The beast thrashed harder, clawing at its own neck in an effort to dislodge her. But Alex didn't let go. She tightened her grip, muscles burning as she cut off its air supply. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, with one final convulsion, the beast went still. She released it, rolling off its lifeless body. The arena was silent. Then, the laughter started. Not cheers. Laughter. Vorgul's voice carried over the stadium, filled with mock amusement. Is this what your species calls a victory? Wrestling a mindless beast like a primitive? You think you have earned respect. More laughter followed, waves of it. Alex wiped blood from her face, her chest rising and falling in deep, controlled breaths. They still didn't take her seriously. Good. It was easier to kill an enemy who thought you were weak. The cell reeked of sweat and old blood. Alex sat against the cold stone wall, her ribs aching from the earlier fight. The wound along her side had clotted, but every breath reminded her of its presence. The Juggernauts hadn't even bothered to tend to it. To them, she was just another expendable piece in their games, a brief amusement before the real matches resumed. She wasn't alone. Across the dimly lit chamber, 2 other women sat in silence, each bearing the same signs of battle and captivity. One of them, a dark-skinned woman with sharp, calculating eyes, was methodically picking at the rusted shackle around her wrist with what looked like a sliver of bone. The other, a wiry blonde with an engineer's build, was dismantling a small metal plate pried from the wall. Alex had seen their type before. Fighters, survivors. The dark-skinned woman was the first to speak, her voice calm, measured. You lasted longer than most. Alex wiped the dried blood from her knuckles. Didn't plan on dying today. The blonde smirked. Neither did the others. Alex eyed her work. What are you doing? The woman didn't look up. Figuring out what's holding this place together. That was promising. The dark-skinned woman set the broken shackle aside. I'm Lieutenant Ava Johnson. That's Sergeant Riley Carter. Alex nodded. Captain Alex Morgan. Ava leaned back against the wall. You're not the first soldier they've thrown in here, but you might be the first to make it past the first round. They think we're weak. We let them keep thinking that. Riley gestured toward the faint hum in the walls. This place is built on repurposed tech from conquered species. The Juggernauts aren't as invincible as they want everyone to believe. They just have better toys. Alex processed that. She had seen the arrogance firsthand. The Zelnath relied on brute force, cybernetics, and centuries of unchecked domination. But they weren't perfect. Their cybernetic augmentation slowed their reflexes. Their sheer size made them predictable, and their reliance on energy shielding had left them complacent against more primitive forms of combat. Ava's voice cut through her thoughts. They're going to throw you into another match soon, probably against one of their weaker fighters, to keep the crowd entertained. Alex met her gaze. Then I need to start winning. Riley tossed her the metal shard she had been working on. You're going to need more than luck. The next fight came sooner than expected. Alex stood in the center of the arena once more, this time facing a juggernaut clad in thick armor. He was twice her size, his cybernetic limbs humming with built-in servos. His helmet bore the sigil of a lower-ranked warlord, which meant he was still expendable in the grand scheme of things. The crowd was restless. They expected a quick kill. The juggernaut charged. Alex didn't move. Not yet. She had studied their movements, their overconfidence. He swung wide, expecting her to dodge back. Instead, she ducked low, rolling beneath his arm. The juggernaut's own momentum betrayed him. He stumbled, recalibrating. She struck fast, slamming the sharpened edge of the metal shard into the joint of his cybernetic knee. Sparks flew. The warrior roared, twisting to grab her, but she had already moved. His adjustments were slow, hindered by the very technology meant to make him unstoppable. She struck again. The cybernetics in his leg gave out, sending him to one knee. The crowd's jeers turned into murmurs. The juggernaut tried to rise, but Alex was already behind him, using his own weight against him. She yanked the shard free, drove it into the exposed cables at the base of his neck, and twisted. The body hit the ground with a satisfying thud. The silence that followed wasn't laughter. The Juggernauts were beginning to watch her differently now. She had their attention. Back in the cell, Riley and Ava were waiting. You just made yourself a problem, Ava said. Alex wiped the sweat from her face. Good. Riley grinned. Then let's make it worse. Over the next few days, they worked. Riley scavenged anything she could, broken restraints, discarded armor pieces, stray wires from the arena's maintenance drones. Ava mapped out the common attack patterns the Juggernauts favored, the weaknesses in their armor, the blind spots in the arena surveillance. Alex trained. She memorized the subtle delays in the Juggernauts' movements, The way their reliance on strength made them predictable. Then came the next match. This time, the Juggernauts weren't laughing. The arena lights bore down with a harsh, artificial glare, illuminating the blood-stained sand beneath Alex's feet. The air hummed with energy, an unspoken anticipation settling over the gathered spectators. The Juggernauts were no longer jeering. The laughter had faded days ago, replaced by a tense curiosity. She had stopped being a joke the moment she made one of their own bleed. This time, they had sensed something different. The gate opposite her groaned as it slid open, revealing a warrior unlike the lumbering brutes she had faced before. He was leaner, built for speed rather than brute force, and his armor was lighter, segmented for mobility. He carried a blade, its surface humming with an energy field that distorted the air around it. A gladiator, honed for the very spectacle she had unwittingly become. Alex studied him, noting the way he shifted his weight from foot to foot. He was testing the ground, measuring her reaction, searching for an opening before the fight had even begun. He wasn't here for entertainment. He was here to end this quickly. The signal blared. She barely had time to move before the blade cut through the space where her head had been. He was fast, faster than the previous fighters. Alex twisted, dropping low as the edge of his weapon hummed past her shoulder. She kicked off the sand, rolling out of his reach before he could adjust. The crowd leaned forward. This was what they had been waiting for. The Juggernaut didn't hesitate, pressing forward with a series of precise, calculated strikes. Alex could do nothing but evade, staying just out of reach, each dodge growing tighter as he adjusted to her movements. He wasn't wasting energy. He was waiting for her to slip. She wasn't going to give him that chance. The next time he lunged, she shifted her weight at the last moment, feinting to the side before twisting back toward him. The motion carried her within his guard, too close for him to use the length of his weapon. She slammed her forearm against his wrist, forcing the blade upward, then drove her elbow into the gap between his ribs. The impact staggered him, but he recovered quickly. A flick of his wrist brought the blade down. Alex barely managed to twist away, the energy field scorching a line across her arm as she disengaged. Pain flared, but she pushed it down. She had learned what she needed. His stance was aggressive, but there was a pattern. Every third strike carried a fraction of hesitation as he reset his footing. A gap. She forced him to chase her, baiting his rhythm, counting the beats in her mind. 1, 2. The next strike came. She moved before he did. Stepping into his reach, she turned her body sideways, letting the blade pass inches from her torso. Her hands found the wrist holding the weapon, twisting with her full weight. The momentum wrenched the hilt from his grip, sending it clattering across the sand. For a fraction of a second, he hesitated. It was all she needed. She drove her knee into his midsection, forcing the air from his lungs, then pivoted, slamming her elbow into the side of his head. He staggered. She followed through with a vicious strike to his throat, feeling the cartilage give beneath her knuckles. The Juggernaut collapsed, choking. The arena fell silent. Then the warlord stood. The chamber shook as Vorgul descended from his throne, his armored form casting a shadow over the stands. His voice carried through the stadium, amplified by unseen speakers. "You have proven yourself more capable than expected." The way he said it sent a chill through her spine. Another gate opened, and this time they sent something worse. The warrior that stepped onto the sand wasn't just a fighter. He was a champion, adorned in ceremonial armor, his cybernetic enhancements seamlessly woven into his flesh. His right arm was entirely mechanical, built for devastating force, while his left hand rested on the hilt of a blade, far more menacing than the one she had just disarmed. She knew, with certainty, that this was no test. This was a warning. She had won one too many times. Alex exhaled, steadying her breath. There was no way out of this. No more playing for survival. This was the fight that would decide whether she walked out of this arena or never walked again. The crowd didn't cheer. They knew this was going to be over quickly. The champion drew his weapon. Alex flexed her fingers, feeling the raw sting of the burn along her arm. Then the signal sounded, and the real fight began. Alex didn't wait. The moment the signal rang, she launched herself forward. Speed was her only advantage now, and she had no intention of giving the champion a moment to dictate the rhythm of the fight. He reacted instantly, bringing his blade up in a sweeping arc, its edge humming with an energy field that could slice through bone like paper. She dropped low, feeling the heat of the weapon pass inches above her head, and drove forward, aiming to strike his side before he could reset. His cybernetic arm moved faster than she expected. A metal fist crashed into her ribs, sending her skidding across the sand. Pain exploded through her torso, but she didn't stay down. Rolling with the impact, she forced herself upright, just in time to avoid the follow-up strike that buried his blade deep into the ground, where she had been lying a second ago. He was stronger, tougher, but he wasn't invincible. Alex circled, keeping her steps light despite the pain flaring in her chest. She could feel a dull warmth spreading beneath her ribs, something broken, but not immediately debilitating. She'd fought through worse. She had to. The champion didn't rush her. He didn't need to. His stance was measured, calculating. He had watched her fights. He knew she was dangerous, and he wouldn't give her the same opportunities the others had. That meant she needed to make her own. She darted forward, throwing a feint toward his right, watching for his reaction. As expected, his cybernetic arm snapped up instantly, anticipating an attack. That told her what she needed to know. He trusted that arm more than his flesh, which meant she had to make him doubt it. She lunged again, this time truly striking, driving her fist toward his head. He blocked effortlessly, the metal plating absorbing the force, but she wasn't done. The moment she made contact, she twisted, slamming her other hand against the wrist joint. The servos whined, momentarily overcompensating for the sudden pressure shift. That was her opening. She pivoted, twisting beneath his guard, and slammed her knee into his side. The impact barely moved him, but it disrupted his stance. She followed up with a vicious elbow to his throat, making him stumble back half a step. It wasn't much, but it was something. The crowd was silent now. The Juggernauts had seen her survive. They had seen her endure, but they had never seen her make one of their champions falter. The warlord stood from his throne, watching intently. The champion adjusted his stance. His expression hadn't changed, but something was different now. He hadn't expected her to keep up. That was a mistake. Alex exhaled, forcing herself to ignore the pain lancing through her ribs. The next exchange had to count. She couldn't keep this up forever. The longer the fight dragged on, the more chances he had to land a decisive blow. She moved again, pressing the attack. Feint left, strike right. Every move designed to force him into relying on his cybernetic arm. She could see it now. The way the servos lagged for a fraction of a second after a heavy block. The way he unconsciously favored his left side whenever she struck high. She had found his weakness. Now she had to exploit it. The next time he swung, she didn't dodge. She met the strike head-on, redirecting it just enough to let it glance off her shoulder. The impact rattled her bones, but she used the momentum, twisting into a brutal kick aimed directly at his wrist. The damaged servos locked up. His arm jerked, momentarily unresponsive. Alex didn't hesitate. She lunged, seizing his own momentum against him, twisting his body just enough to expose the gap beneath his arm. She drove her knee up, slamming into the vulnerable joint, then wrenched his entire arm down. Something cracked. The champion let out a sharp grunt. For the first time, she saw hesitation in his eyes. It was over. Alex didn't give him a chance to recover. She struck fast, each hit precise, each movement a calculated dismantling of the warrior in front of her. His left-hand blade swung wildly, but she was already inside his guard. She slammed her fist into his throat, driving him back. His balance wavered. She followed through, twisting his injured arm until it gave with a sickening snap. The champion collapsed to his knees. The arena was dead silent. Alex stood over him, breathing hard. She could feel the exhaustion creeping in, the bruises, the fractures, but she had won. The warlord's voice rang out across the chamber. Finish it. The command was absolute. The crowd stirred, waiting. Alex looked down at the defeated warrior. He met her gaze, his expression unreadable. He knew the rules as well as she did. There was no mercy here. No surrender. Her hands clenched into fists. She had fought for survival, for the right to stand. But this was different. She turned. The warlord's expression darkened. You refuse. Alex met his gaze, unflinching. I'm not your executioner. For a moment, there was silence. Then laughter. Low at first, then spreading through the warlord's circle. Amusement, contempt, curiosity. Vorgul stepped forward, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the sand. Interesting. He gestured, and the guards moved in, seizing the fallen champion. Not to kill him, to remove him. Alex exhaled, muscles tight with exhaustion. She had won, and the warlord had just decided she was more valuable alive.